I think we can get started. Welcome everyone to today's meeting of the planning group of the Russian River Water Forum. I'm Ben Gettleman. I work with Kearns and West, and I'm going to be facilitating the meeting today. I'm joined by my colleagues Jim Downing and Tom Fisher, who are going to be providing support for the meeting and also taking notes. So let's get into the presentation, and then we'll do some introductions here. Next slide, please. So just want to start with objectives. If the members of the planning group received the agenda, so these are consistent with those objectives. This is, and just to tee up for context, this will likely be the last planning group meeting, at least for the foreseeable future. And so we do want to just review the process that we all went through for the Water Forum and what we all covered and accomplished together. And ask members of the group to reflect on that as well. Importantly, we want to provide an update and discuss the new EEL Russian facility alternatives and the JPA's recommendation. We have some staff from the State Water Board who are here today, are going to give an update on a telemetry pilot project in the Russian River. And then similar to all of our planning group meetings, we want to provide opportunity for public comment. So that's what we've got on tap for today. We're scheduled to go from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. We might not meet the whole time, but we'll see how things go. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to do some introductions. I'm just going to ask for members of the planning group. We're just going to do introductions with the planning group members. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves. Just raise your hand. And just, we need your organization and your name, and we'll go around and do this pretty quickly. So I'll just call on folks as their hands are raised, and again invite you to introduce yourselves. Okay, Jamie, go ahead.
Jamie Neary with Russian Riverkeeper.
Beth.
Salamone, the general manager for the Russian River Flood Control and Water Conservation Improvement District.
Welcome. Adrienne.
Adrienne Garialdi. I'm an alternate for agriculture.
Your organization, Adrienne?
I'm secretary of the Russian River Property Owners.
Thanks. Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer Burke, director of the City of Santa Rosa's Water Department.
Janet.
Hi, everyone. Janet Pauley, Chair, Mendocino County Inland Water and Power Commission.
Welcome. Vivian.
Vivian Hillowell, Pacific Coast Federation of Fishermen's Associations, Commercial Fishing Group, and the Institute for Fisheries Resources. And my alternate, Andy Kona, is here also.
Welcome. Kathy. Kathy, you're on mute.
Yeah, I know. Kathy Monroe, I'm the representative from the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District.
Welcome, Michael.
Michael McTesey, I'm the alternate for County of Sonoma.
Tony.
Good afternoon, Tony Williams, General Manager, North Marin Water District.
Mike.
Mike Shaver, Water Resource Manager with the Potter Valley Tribe.
Welcome, Mike. Terry.
Terry Crowley, Utility Director for City Healdsburg.
Let's see, Adam. Adam, you're still on mute.
Yeah, Adam Gaska, represent water suppliers for Mendocino County. I am board president of Redwood Valley County Water District and ag rep on the Ukiah Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency.
Welcome. Alicia.
Alicia Heyman, director for Friends of the Eel River.
Welcome. Francis.
Francis Mendoza, Save California Salmon, and alternate.
Welcome. Okay. Any other planning group members or alternates? Okay. And we might have others who trickle on throughout the course of the meeting, but want to welcome you all to today's meeting, and for members of the public, want to welcome you as well. Let's go to the next slide, please. I noticed a couple folks have done this for the planning group members, just to help us sort of see the hands as we go through it. If you can rename yourself, you go to your little tile and go to the top right, the 3 dots, and go to rename and just put a PG in front of your name, just so we can easily identify all the planning group members as we facilitate the conversation. So just take a second to do that. That would be great. Okay, and while you're doing that, I will just walk through the agenda. This is mirrors the objectives. I'm going to just tee off our discussion of the water forms process and accomplishments. We have Dave Manning from Sonoma Water, and Tom Johnson will also be joining in a little bit to provide the update on the alternatives analysis. And then we have Laurel Dodgen and Brent Vanderberg from the Water Board, who are going to be presenting on the telemetry pilot project. And then we'll get to public comment and do a bit of a recap before we adjourn. So let's go to the next slide, please. So just a couple participation guidelines to make sure everyone has the opportunity to participate. Just want to acknowledge that there's lots of different views and perspectives across the basins here, and want to just request that we're all mutually respectful of those differences as we sort of talk and interact with one another. That we listen to as other people are talking, and that one person speaks at a time, and we'll do our best to manage the discussion to make sure that happens. For members of the public, the discussion and the presentations, that's really focused on the planning group members and the presenters. And if you're interested in providing a comment, we'll do that in the public comment phase of the meeting, which comes towards the latter part of the meeting. So just want to make sure that's clear. Okay, let's go to the next slide. A couple Zoom logistics here for the planning group members. Please use the raise the hand function if you have a question or would like to speak. And I'll do my best to make sure everyone can participate fully. Really request that we not have a discussion about the content of the meeting in the chat, because that can be hard to follow. So you're invited to use the chat if you have technical issues around the Zoom, sort of the platform, but otherwise let's try to just discuss it orally. This meeting is being recorded. Just want to make sure folks know that. And the presentation we're going to walk through, and Tom's working on the meeting notes and the recording itself, those are all going to be posted on the Water Forum website. So you'll get those, as a follow-up to this meeting. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to take a little time and just kind of walk through our process here. Let's go to the next slide. And as I think as many of you know, there was a lot of work that was done leading up to the formation of the planning group as part of the Water Forum. So Kearns and West, we started with with Sonoma Water, and then a group of sort of advisory members. And Kearns and West did a bunch of interviews. We interviewed, I think, a total of 73 people in both basins to really understand what the key interests were, and what kind of emerged key themes in those conversations. And we put that summary document out there and kind of used that to help inform the process design of the Water Forum. We also conducted a series of tribal briefings. I think we conducted a total of 8 with individual tribes, and we also presented out with Sonoma Water and others to the ML STEP group, which is a sort of a coalition of tribes. I think we did 13 briefings with elected officials, just to make sure that those representatives were aware of what the Water Forum was hoping to achieve, and we got their advice on how they thought it could be successful. And then we also convened an interim steering committee to advise us on the composition of the Water Forum, the planning group, and what that group would be tasked to do. So we took input from a bunch of different places: the interviews, the tribal briefings, the meetings with elected officials, and we convened an interim steering committee. And out of that came the charter for the planning group, and then recommended composition of the planning group, which did morph a bit as we began to meet, and there were other slots identified, but we felt like it was a really productive, constructive way to get input to arrive at a place where folks thought the planning group could really add some value. We also created a website for the Water Forum to make information easily accessible for anyone who is interested. Okay, so that's leading up to the planning group. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I'm just going to talk quickly through the meetings that we did have. The first meeting we had was in May 2023, and so this is about a year going with this planning group. The first, and then the numbers on the left, that's the number of the meeting. So the first meeting, we really started with the charter and the role of the group. And we, as folks will recall, we asked everyone to kind of, identify what their interests were with respect to the decommissioning of the Potter Valley project as sort of a resource to go back to and reference through the various discussions we've had. The second meeting, we moved into, recruiting membership for the steering committee that advised on the planning group agenda and sort of moving forward. And then also to understand who is interested in the various work groups that we convened that got into more of the technical details. And right around that time, we also conducted some technical briefings namely around water supply and fisheries and water rights in June, to provide that technical grounding both to the planning group members and to the general public around what are all the issues that are relevant that folks really need to understand to be able to weigh in here. And so I thought those were well received. When we got to the third meeting, I think we heard that there was a lot of interest in the resiliency piece here. And so we had a whole suite of presentations around resiliency efforts taking place in the Russian River Basin, and a discussion of how that all could potentially be coordinated and moved forward in the future. Let's go to the next slide. Getting into the fourth meeting, we had a meeting that just focused on the new Eel Russian facility proposal to PG&E. Fifth meeting, we had a presentation. Really, that meeting focused on Lake County and had presentations from the two supervisors from Lake County and also the Lake Pillsbury Alliance. The sixth meeting had a variety of presentations of sort of relevant efforts in the Eel River. And then we have today's meeting. Just to note that we've had public comment at all meetings. All of those discussions have been documented and those summaries have been provided. Vivian, I see your question in the chat of how long the Water Forum site will stay up. I'd invite Sonoma Water folks to weigh in on that. My thinking is that could stay up for a little while now, but we're not really sure. So I don't know if Pam or Dave or others have any thoughts on how long the website's going to be up.
Do you want me to go ahead, David? So we have talked about this internally. I don't think we've decided exactly how long it's going to stay up, but I would propose that it stay up for quite a bit of time because it is a good resource for information. So I would expect it to stay up for, I don't know when the annual where we have to sort of renew our website comes up, but I would expect we'd renew it at least one more time. I think it's an annual renewal.
Okay, thanks. And Jim, we can see a portion of your Outlook email, which I don't think you want to share. So maybe you can click that up. Thanks. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So there were a couple of different groups that were convened to advise the planning group on both process and then some of the technical issues. So there was a steering committee that was convened, and a number of those steering committee members are with us today. That group met 6 times and generally met in advance of the planning group meetings to weigh in on the agenda topics and preparation and kind of thinking through how to tee those up for a productive conversation, and really appreciate the steering committee members for doing that. The water supply and fisheries subcommittee met one time as a follow-up to that technical briefing. The Water Rights and Water Management Subcommittee met more frequently. They met 5 times to kind of talk about really what's the current state of water rights as it relates to the Potter Valley project. And then the Russian River Resiliency Subcommittee met 1 time as well. And so I think those are my slides. And I think I just want to stop and just share appreciation for the amount of time that everyone spent both in informing the creation of the water forum and then just showing up and sharing, what you thought was important and how as these 2 basins could move towards a solution, how that might happen. And these sort of collaborative processes take twists and turns, and sometimes you're not exactly sure where it's going to go, but we really appreciate how everyone interacted, in the discussions we had, because I thought they were really productive, and I think we learned a lot. So just want to again say thank you for that. And I think we have a little time. If anyone has anything they'd like, and I guess the last thing I would say is that for the foreseeable future, it looks like I think due to funding mainly, that this group is going to pause. But it takes a lot of effort to get these platforms up and running. And so I think this is something that could be leveraged, or something like it could be leveraged in the future. So with that, if anyone else has any reflections to share on the process and what we were able to talk about and cover, we have a little time for that. So I'll just we'll leave it there. Okay. All right. Well, with that, I think we can move to we're a little early, but I think, Mike, go ahead.
I just like to thank you for your efforts on this and say that the tribe and other tribes meet regularly. And we still have interest, I guess, especially on the topics of the water resiliency. I thought there'd be efforts. I don't know I think some of the existing groups, such as the Flood Control District and Water Shed Group and the Sonoma Water Agency, if they are in the future doing any type of water conservation, hopefully your entities could help host those and still move some of those goals forward. And then I guess on the fisheries aspects more, I was interested in, I guess, to still continue the tribal efforts to coordinate with organizations such as Cal Trout or the Russian River Keeper up in the upper Eel area and the Eel watershed. There's still the Eel River Water Forum. And I see on the websites that's hosted by Cal Trout. So again, hopefully that some of these organizations that already have overlapping goals will maybe continue the same type of effort in the Russian River as they have up in the Eel River. But just we'll be still here at Potter Valley, and any of those entities that want to reach out to continue those efforts, just let us know.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Okay. Well, I think we can go to our next presentation. So over to you, Dave, on the update on the alternatives analysis.
Great. I think I have to be allowed to share. There we go. Let me pull this up. Share. Are you all seeing that in its full screen view?
Yep.
Yep. Very good. Okay. Well, at the risk of being a little redundant, I think some of you may have seen parts of this presentation, elements of it. This is the latest iteration. So if you haven't seen all the latest renderings of the 2 alternatives, we'll show you that. And we're going to take you through sort of a little bit of a time-lapse looking series of renderings for the selected alternative. Some of this I know will be a little remedial. I'll try to get through that quickly. Not going to talk about the Potter Valley Project's background, but I will talk about the alternatives that were considered for Cape Horn Dam and the evaluation process that we used to arrive at a preferred alternative, and then our next steps. So I think everyone that's on this call has been well oriented to the site at Cape Horn Dam and Van Arsdale Reservoir and the Van Arsdale diversion structure. But just in case, here are some important features of that facility, namely the diversion tunnel upstream of the dam crest, the dam spillway or the dam face itself, and then immediately downstream, the fish barrier, fish hotel, and fish ladder entrance. So those are sort of key features to look at as we step through this alternative evaluation process. And just for a little reminder, the existing conditions out there now, of course, the facility built back in 1908 is antiquated. Its fish ladder had been retrofitted over time, but it is dated. And this pool and weir style ladder doesn't meet any modern fish passage criteria and has been problematic for lamprey before it was adjusted, for the passage of salmonids under a variety of conditions, particularly when the river comes up at high flow and overwhelms the ladder and the fish hotel. And I'll show you some of the consequences of that. Just for scale, in this picture, you can see the excavator in the foreground. That is the river back in 2019, just after a very high flow event. And although PG&E made some modifications in the last couple of years to keep some sediment out of the fish hotel, before they made those modifications, you can see the result of those high flow events. So on the left-hand image there is the interior of the fish hotel without all of the sediment that you see in the middle photo that accumulates after these large storms. And even though there were some modifications made to the fish hotel to prevent it from filling with debris like this, some sediment doors were installed recently. The pool and weir style ladder still risks filling with sediment and making fish passage impossible. So this ladder has been problematic for quite some time. And so keeping that ladder was not, or modifying it was seen as not among the best alternatives to continue to pass fish and provide for diversion at Cape Horn Dam and Van Arsdale. Several alternatives were considered and rejected through the sort of years-long process, several years actually of deliberation and consideration by a variety of groups, most of which were stakeholder supported by the resource agencies and other groups, tribes, NGOs. A rainy collector system, not unlike what's in the Russian River or in the Mad River, was considered. The site conditions aren't conducive to that at this particular location. An upstream diversion canal was considered, and it was complicated and expensive and not deemed to be tremendously feasible. The fish passage improvements at the dam itself, the ladder, as I just mentioned, has been problematic, so it was not viewed as a viable alternative to try to enhance that ladder, or to reconstruct a ladder for that matter. But a couple of alternatives did rise to the sort of feasible stage and were taken further. And that includes a control section with a pump station, or we're dubbing that alternative E2, and a roughened channel. Two different approaches at the same site with the objective of passing fish seamlessly upstream and allowing continued diversion using the existing tunnel infrastructure into the Russian River. So fast forward after a year or so of work, we arrived at two potential designs, and we had those two alternatives rendered. So these renderings that you see accurately reflect the engineering plans and the existing topography. There are some details that, of course, will change, but as of the status of the design today, which is at somewhere between a 20 and a 30% level, this is a fairly accurate depiction of what the engineering work shows. So in this image of the pump station, you can see that green building with the brown roof houses the pump motors themselves. And just below that, there's a cage that protects the fish screens themselves, the screens that that draw the water into this well, this pump station that is then conveyed upstream behind that retaining wall. You can see that new retaining wall, which is about 30 feet high. And the ground behind that wall, it covers over a conduit that's 6 or 7 feet in diameter and connects that conduit to the existing tunnel infrastructure, which would be reconfigured to remove the old fish screen that existed there, the Archimedes screw pump, all the other infrastructure at the site. So all that remains is and we'll see lots of images of this, is a remnant foundation of the dam that serves as a little bit of grade control to keep the water against the screens themselves. And then a small section again for grade control of the old exclusion barrier fish hotel. That's what the site looks like with some flow in it. That's a moderate level of flow, hundreds of cubic feet per second. The other alternative is this roughened channel. And at first blush, the thing you'll immediately recognize is that retaining wall isn't there. The pump station isn't there. Instead, the area that was, the dam did fill in the channel is filled even more with engineered rock fill. And that rock fill ranges in diameter from 4 to 12 or 15 feet. Those larger boulders that you see in the image there are up to 15 feet in diameter. It's an 800-foot long engineered rock ramp that slopes up at 3% and allows the water, and we'll see that when we add the water to this image. And when we go back one, you can see the screens are now located right at the same facility as the tunnel diversion. They penetrate the outside wall of the existing tunnel infrastructure, and the water is allowed to pond up around those pumps and be diverted via gravity, by those screens, excuse me, and be diverted via gravity. So there is no mechanical pumping, which is the principal difference between the roughened channel alternative and the pump station. So to evaluate these alternatives, we gathered a group of technical advisors. We met 10 times from July 2023 to just this past March. You can see the organizations representing that technical group. They really span both state and federal agencies, tribes, local organizations like Mendocino Inland Water and Power Commission, Sonoma Water, and NGOs like California Trout. So it was biologists, water managers, engineers, folks with expertise in the construction, the management of these kinds of facilities. So we used several criteria, general categories of criteria, 38 total criteria, to look at things like the biological feasibility of upstream passage, the feasibility of downstream passage, the resiliency and reliability of either alternative, its constructability, and cost. So this is just an example of the matrix of criteria that we use to evaluate each facility. For example, here for upstream fish passage, we looked at things like the hydraulics of the facility under high and low flow conditions, how much energy a fish might expend ascending either facility, whether or not they cause delay, injury, increased predation risk. Each of these criteria was graded on a score of 1 to 10. And there was quite a bit of supporting information that will be publicly available very soon. In June, the public will be able to see the full report that supports this evaluation process. And there's quite a bit of detail about these facilities in that report that the technical advisory group was able to use to score each of those alternatives. And we asked for the scoring to be done by organization. So each of those organizations had several experts. Not every organization scored every set of criteria because they simply may not have had that expertise. But in general, and you can see there's a column here called the fraction of scorer participation, that most organizations did score many of these criteria. In general, higher scores indicated better performance between the two alternatives. And the range, so the difference between the highest and the lowest score, the higher that range, the greater uncertainty or disagreement there was among the groups. And we created heat maps of each of these criteria and the scores between the two alternatives, where you see green, and this is just an example, and I'm not going to show all 38 results for each criterion, but by example, greener colors, higher scores, more favorable, red, less favorable, and the same thing is true with the range. The higher the score, the greater the heat, the more uncertainty there was between the two. When we looked at all of the results, there were really 13 individual criteria that showed the most difference between the two alternatives. And we focused on those, and they covered most of the general categories. So, for example, upstream passage, we saw that, the high and the low flow results, there were differences of opinion about which of the two facilities might perform better, but the preponderance of the scoring favored the pump station over the roughened channel. That was the same for resiliency and reliability, with the exception of mechanical systems that that the roughened channel does not have and the pump station does. And all the way through constructability, implementation, and cost, most of the favorable scores leaned toward the direction of the pump station. So in summary, when we looked at fish passage, the superior upstream and downstream fish passage results were for the pump station E2. Sedimentation was an important consideration. The Eel River carries a naturally very high sediment load. A lot of that sediment is currently captured behind Scott Dam. When Scott Dam is removed, it's going to change in the short term, of course, the volume of sediment that flows past the Cape Horn Dam and Van Arsdale site. But even in the long term, the sediment dynamics, because for so many years it's been captured by Scott Dam, will change when Scott Dam is long gone. So there was consideration about which of the two facilities would best cope with that new sediment regime. And the determination of this technical advisory group is that the pump station would fare better. In terms of construction costs, there wasn't a gigantic difference at this phase of design between the construction cost estimates, but the pump station beat out the roughened channel in that regard. In terms of O&M costs, not hard to imagine that operating a pump station with all of its mechanical parts, its energy needs, will have a higher O&M cost. So in that category, the roughened channel was superior to the pump station. In terms of constructability and implementation, the pump station was seen as less complex to design. There's better access for building it. It's less vulnerable to unknown conditions subsurface. That's the geotechnical conditions at the site. So the pump station seemed like a less risky construction and implementation endeavor. And there were a whole host of other factors among those 38 criteria that did not show significant differences between either alternative. Part of that is because both alternatives sort of went through a process of weaning to get to this level. So both were thought to be feasible in obtaining the objective of passing fish and diverting water to the Russian River watershed. So, they had already been through their own pre-screening process. But there's also some information that still needs to be developed, and some of that information wasn't sufficient enough to make to differentiate between the two alternatives. So in short, the recommended project was the pump station. It had lower risk for water supply due to some of those factors I just described, and it was deemed as superior for fish passage. And again, for that lower design risk in construction, better performance for both upstream and downstream passage, and ease of designing around some of the reliability issues that might affect the roughened channel. So I'll take you through a bit of the renderings here so that you can see how the site might change. This is the existing condition of Cape Horn Dam, sort of idealized, but again, all of the features are accurate in relation to each other. If we implement the pump station, you can see here that a very large proportion of the dam, not just the spillways or the face of the dam that has that stair-step appearance, but also the earthen embankment filled portion of the dam, so that would be on the left-hand side of your image, are removed almost entirely. So there is really only a remnant piece of both the dam spillway and the fish hotel that remain, and that earthen embankment portion of the dam is removed. That would be on the left-hand side. Here it is from a different aerial perspective. In this case, with no water. There is some of the remaining dam face that's on the river left. That's the right-hand side of your image, against some of the existing bedrock. And that helps to provide some stability to the location of the pump station. But as you can see, it ties into that 30-foot retaining wall and is no longer inundated. This cross-section that you see here, where the former dam face exists and now the pump station exists, is wide enough to accommodate the 100-year flood. So the 100-year flood does not reach the level of that pump station. It's fairly wide, it's fairly deep, and it's defended from flooding. So further stability is provided by keeping the portions of that old dam face that are connected to the existing bedrock. In these images, you will see, and it's really just for reference, the old fish ladder and some of the old fish passage facilities that were there to support Cape Horn Dam. Those are shown as filled with a concrete slurry. They could just as easily be removed. They are non-functional. So that entire old fishway is high, dry, and out of the river. Here's that same site with a moderate level of flow. We can take a look from a different perspective, looking from the diversion tunnel downstream. Again, what the site looks like from that upstream to downstream view, what it looks like with hundreds of cubic feet per second of flow in the river, what it looks like with thousands of cubic feet per flow in the river, and a couple more perspectives to show you. Again, that old fishway serves no purpose. It can just as easily be removed. And some of the other design details, I mean, there will be refinements to some of the elevations of the remaining sills and how the river looks in between those two features. You know, the idea is for fish to smoothly transition over those two small bumps in the river. They are no more than a foot in height where fish would pass them. They actually angle down from, in this view, the left to the right to help concentrate some low flow against the fish screens, but they present no obstacle to upstream migrating fish. So the next steps, this work was done under a California Department of Water Resources grant. That grant is this portion of the work from Macmillan Incorporated will be done by June 1st. As I think a lot of you know, Sonoma Water received a grant from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamations through their Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration Program to take the preferred alternative from this process I just described to you up to the 60% design level. We were awarded that grant in December. We anticipate having the grant signed by 2024 and then releasing a request for proposals for consultant services to take that design to 60% sometime this summer or fall. And the same technical advisory group that met, we hope will continue to advise the design for this next phase. There'll be a pause in the activity of that group while we solicit for and contract a new consultant, but that work will continue, and we'll continue to get all of the technical expertise Really incredible participation from that technical advisory group. There were some 30 members, and they provided a lot of great feedback. And I think with that, Ben, I can take any questions. And I don't know if Tom, I know, was planning to join sometime between 2:30 and 3. I don't know if Tom was able to jump on the line, but if he is, Tom has some technical expertise as a water resources engineer that I do not as an environmental resources manager. I can answer some of the fisheries questions, but if folks want to know more about the infrastructure and how it may be designed and function, that is really more Tom's realm than mine.
Great. Thanks, Dave. I don't see Tom yet. But I'd say let's just see what questions we have and hopefully he'll jump on as we get into the Q&A here. So Mike, I see your hand. You want to go ahead?
Yes, again, Mike Shaver with Potter Valley Tribe. Dave, great presentation. I had seen the presentation with the Eel River Authority meeting. In your alternative analysis, I didn't catch in that presentation or this one, the pumping and the possible of drawing in fish. A decade ago or more, I worked with the Calafate Bay Delta Estuary Program. And there's quite an issue of moving the water from the northern to the southern past the Bay Area and the sucking in of some of the fish in those areas. But those are a lot slower moving waters. So now under your focus most on the passage, is the pumping or the loss of fish to the pumps less because of the higher velocities, or has there been a comparison between the two alternatives?
Yeah, so very different, good question. Very different kinds of pumps. The screens really prevent the fish from being entrained, and the screen mesh size is small, smaller than any of the fish that would be passing by the site. And more importantly, there are two kinds of velocity criteria that are looked at for keeping fish safe around screens, and that is the sweeping velocity and the approach velocity. So the sweeping velocity, so the water velocity as it moves past the screen, is fast enough in this alternative to not allow the fish to be impinged upon the screens themselves, right? So water is moving past the site at a rate that is faster than the water being drawn through the fish screen. And there really isn't an opportunity for a fish to be impinged or injured on the screen itself. The screens they rotate, they have cleaning mechanisms on them that burst air and help remove algae. So there are some mechanical systems associated with them, but the mesh size itself is smaller than the life stages of fish that are passing the site, and the water velocity is sweeping them right past the screens themselves.
Thank you. I kind of thought that was the probably likely situation. Thanks.
Yes.
Glenn?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
One quick question. What capacity of intake are you designing for, say in CFS?
So the maximum capacity is 300 CFS,
Okay.
which matches the theoretical maximum tunnel capacity. So that is that's the maximum sizing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions from planning group members? Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, Dave. So Dave's presentation will be available on the Russian River Water Forum website, so folks can access it there. We'll get that on there soon. And I think we have Laurel from the State Water Board here with us, and Laura, we can get right to your presentation now.
All right, thanks. I'll get it queued up. I think Brent was going to do a brief introduction first, so we can go ahead and get started with Brent.
Great, thanks, Laurel. Greetings, everybody. Thank you for providing us this opportunity to update the forum on our telemetry project. My name is Brent Vanderberg. I'm a supervising geologist in our Division of Water Rights, and I oversee all of the data for the Division of Water Rights. I oversee 3 units, and one of the units is led by Laurel Dodgen here, referred to as our telemetry research unit. And the topic of today's discussion will relate to what the telemetry research is doing alongside the California Water Data Consortium and others around the water data circles. So with that, Laurel, take it away.
All right. Okay. So I am Laurel Dodgen. I'll skip my introduction since Brent already introduced me, but thank you for making a few minutes this afternoon to do a very brief overview of our pilot telemetry project that we are planning. So the take-home message that I hope you'll remember is that the State Water Board will run a pilot telemetry project starting in 2025 in the Russian River watershed. We are currently looking for volunteers to participate in the pilot project. And so if you think that's something you might be interested in, you have great timing because our first outreach event was only 2 days ago and we're just starting our outreach efforts. The recording for that event is available. And so if you're interested in that, feel free to navigate to the California Water Data Consortium website where you can get on the contacts list, view the recording, and also read a summary about this project. There are other projects going on in the area, and so for clarity, I want to draw your attention to it. The major one is this effort by the Supply and Demand Assessment Program. During the last drought, they developed several tools for the Russian River watershed to quantify water supply and water use in order to make more informed management decisions. And so now they are expanding that tool as well as developing other modeling for the North Coast area. They have outreach events going on right now. So if you're interested in those outreach events, or if you have questions, please feel free to contact the Supply and Demand Assessment Program. So as we all know, California is facing significant water challenges due to increasing demand and increasingly inconsistent precipitation. Addressing these challenges requires multifaceted, coordinated resource management, and a critical part of good resource management is accurate, timely, and usable data. At the Division of Water Rights, we receive annual reports of water diversion and use, and these reports can sometimes lag behind the actual event by up to 18 months, which means that we don't have that useful data in order to make management decisions, and that our decisions don't reflect the current watershed reality. So telemetry is the automatic measurement and automatic transmission of data in order to generate water data for timely and targeted management decisions. Limited water monitoring data has so many benefits, including supporting management decisions to protect water rights and have more targeted curtailments, to reduce government costs by reducing staff hours to clean up data, and facilitating drought solutions like managed aquifer recharge and water trading. So for this pilot project, we'll be evaluating water telemetry in the Russian River watershed. Initially, we'll be collaborating with the California Water Data Consortium, and then we do plan to install equipment at about 75 monitoring sites. And then we'll be conducting water monitoring for around a water year. I want to be very clear that this is purely a research project and there is no enforcement component for this project. The pilot telemetry project wants to evaluate several program goals, and those can be summarized sort of as looking at cost and effectiveness of equipment, especially in rural areas, to simplify the data reporting process into data systems for our reporters, and then to develop data-driven recommendations for better resource management. Overall, we really want to just gain knowledge from community members who understand the real-world conditions around monitoring and reporting their water data. I'll go through this really briefly, and if you're interested, we can always go into more details. But we started this planning back in 2023 when we established a contract with the California Water Data Consortium. This year, we have selected the Russian River watershed, and we're designing our network plan and our data governance plans. In 2025, we'll be starting a second contract with an equipment contractor who will be doing the actual procurement, installation, and O&M on the monitoring equipment. And then in the following years, we'll be doing the water monitoring and ingesting our telemetry data into state systems, and finally analyzing our results and sharing them. We are collaborating with the California Water Data Consortium on this initial planning outreach, and that was really important to us because the consortium is an independent, neutral organization designed to promote good water data for the benefit of California. So the consortium is actually performing the initial outreach and initial research for this project. One of the deliverables that they provided to us was their evaluation of watershed recommendations for this pilot project. The consortium did recommend to us the Russian River watershed based on their evaluation of several key criteria. The Russian River watershed could benefit from improved water monitoring and has been specifically named in several state documents. There's been many previous successful board and community collaborations, and there's a strong community support for improved water monitoring in the area. And then also the Russian River watershed hydrologically has a reasonable amount of complexity that will help us scale the results of the pilot project to California as a whole. We are seeking community volunteers. And so I'll go through these different roles. The land access volunteers are people who are interested in providing access to their land and to a water body on their land so that we can install and maintain telemetered water monitoring equipment. So their obligation is simply to provide access. Then a second group of community partners would be providing equipment access, where they already have some equipment out in the watershed. They're already performing some degree of water monitoring, but we would partner with them to upgrade their existing equipment and bring it into a state where it can telemeter to board data systems. And finally, we're interested in community partners who can provide data access for us. So maybe they're already doing water monitoring, they have an awesome telemetry setup, and so we want to partner with them to get that data configured in a way that it can import to state data systems. There are several benefits of volunteering. Participants can choose to keep equipment that we install. So if you are just providing land access and we go out and install entirely new sensors and data loggers and transmitters and power supplies, you can choose to keep that at the end of the project. If you are providing equipment access and maybe you were going to install a power supply and a transmitter to get your equipment to be telemetered, you can choose to keep that equipment also. There is no obligation to keep the equipment. If you choose to do so, then we will also provide training documents so that you can use the equipment moving forward for your own needs. A benefit for many community partners is that this equipment is going to be configured by water board staff. And what I mean is that it will be set up in a way to collect data and report that data in a way that directly transmits it to state systems and in a configuration that could comply with SB 88 requirements. So if some of those things sound interesting to you, we do have more information at our other outreach meetings about exactly how that would work. But for people who are interested in that, it's a real leg up as far as meeting your SB 88 reporting requirements. And finally, this is an opportunity during the pilot project to give feedback to staff about real world conditions, about your realities of monitoring at your site and your difficulties that the state should be aware of so that we don't make regulations that don't make sense. And finally, it's an opportunity for community partners to contribute to plans for simplification of water reporting. So as I mentioned, this is completely voluntary. Participation is optional, but I do hope that you'll consider learning more about this project and potentially participating. If you are interested in more information, you can read about the project on the California Water Data Consortium's website, or you can get on their contact list to hear about future outreach meetings. We have one scheduled for June and one for July. Feel free to email me, Laurel Dodgen, at waterboards.ca.gov, or you can also reach out to Sonia, who is the consortium's lead for this project, at smilanova@californiawaterdata.org. All right, that is all my prepared slides, so thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Laurel. Thank you. Great overview. I'll add, there's one other detail. In the event that a community participant does want to install some equipment, and then at the end of the project, if they decide they don't want the equipment, we'll return the infrastructure back to the original condition. I just wanted to add that just for clarity. Other than that, I think we have some time for Q&A, I believe, to the host.
Yes, we do.
Great.
And thanks for your presentation, Laurel. Do planning group members have questions?
That was a lot in a short amount of time, and there's much more to come. So don't worry if you don't have questions now, we'll be around. Also, Laurel, hopefully, if you could please put the links in the chat in this meeting, and then that'll help folks just click and get on target real quick. I think that'll be helpful.
Yeah, we can put these links in the summary as well, so folks have access to that. But yeah, thank you both for coming to the meeting today and giving this information. Really exciting to see this happening in the Russian River.
Happy to be here. Appreciate your time, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All righty. So those were the presentations that we had prepared for today. We're running a little bit ahead of schedule. And the last two things that we have for today's meeting are public comments. So any members of the public that would like to make a comment or invited to do so, just raise your hand and we'll take a cue. And then just wrapping up a little bit of a recap and next steps, and then we'll let folks go. So if there's anyone who's a member of the public that would like to provide a comment, now is the time to do that. So please raise your hand if you'd like to. Vivian, you're not a member of the public, but would you like to make a comment?
Andy would like to make a comment. He's my alternate, so he's public today.
Yeah, I noticed thank you. I noticed in the beginning you were talking about reviewing what we've done so far. And one of those things was when you invited us to just declare our interest in this process and so on. You also, in that same sentence, asked us for our positions on issues. So I've been toying with that the whole time we've been doing this, because I knew that we would be coming to a point like this down the line. And one of the things that bothered me is at the end of the last meeting that we had when we were all together, there's a lady at the back of the room, very nice elderly lady, that spoke about why can't we keep the dams in place and somehow mitigate for them rather than take them out because of all the benefits that we've enjoyed so far. And I realized that there's a gap in the information here that these people do not have, but they need to have to get past the denial part of this separation anxiety from what we used to have and what we expected to have in the future. And to do that, we've got to take a look at what the real situation is and how we got where we are at. It's been a political football, the whole idea of taking the dams out. Well, whether we were for or against them coming out completely or partially, whatever, it's out of our hands, and people don't realize that. And this was really underscored when they had the meeting with the group to talk about the decision to have the reference channel or the pump alternative. And there were 2 or 3 gentlemen that were about in my age group, they were over 80, which I am. I'll be 81 next month, that spoke in a way that I don't think many of you younger people really got. And I'd like to comment on that. And these people need to understand the chain of events that caused these dams to be decided by PG&E to take them out, rather than keep messing around and trying to keep them going. And the best information I have on that is this letter regarding the Scott Dam from April 12th, 2023 for Vice President Power Generation, Pacific Gas and Electric Company to Chief of Dam Safety Engineer. And in that letter, they talk about this study is in part of Pacific Gas and Electric Company's and PG&E's ongoing reevaluation of the dam that was initiated in response to the dam safety department letter dated January 22nd, 21 to address potential dam safety concerns. Now, I don't know where that letter is, but it seems to me that it is a real missing link in the understanding of what the hell is really going on here that caused all of this stuff that we're talking about today to occur. And so if you can't get these old guys like me that were World War II babies, they're not baby boomers. We were born in the middle of that war. And it was a real thing. Some of us might have fought, the older brothers might have fought in Korea. Many of us might have fought in Vietnam. And we really care about the resource as well. And these people just don't get it, that it wasn't PG&E's idea alone. They were told by dam safety people to start taking a real close look at this because of their information. And I'd like to see you guys get a hold of that letter that started this process, according to PG&E, that really started this whole thing going, and get these other people that still don't get it to get it. Otherwise, we're still going to have an ongoing controversy and acrimony as we go on. And this reflects into the whole voting community where people like Huffman are under duress because people might vote them out of office because they don't really understand what's going on here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other members of the public who'd like to make a comment? Okay, not seeing any other hands here. I think in that case we can go to a recap here. I don't know if we have another. Glenn, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I assume that members of the public have finished. You want to open it up to planning group comments. One of the things that it was very valuable that came out of this process is a long list of various water conservation measures in the Russian River. Water conservation measures, water reuse, aquifer recharge programs, some of them quite successful, some of them good models for duplicating elsewhere. I want to make sure that that does not get lost. That information, if you can package that up somewhere and put it somewhere where it can be obtained on the website, that would be really interesting and an important move forward to break through the gridlock over water issues in the basin. I think that is one of the more valuable spin-offs of the kind of discussions and cooperative work we've been having. Don't lose sight of it. Don't let any of us lose sight of it.
Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, I think we can make that happen. I think and get that on the website so folks can access it and maybe link to that in our summary. So appreciate the request there. Adrian?
Yes, thanks, Glenn. And I think that the recording of that meeting where those presentations were done is available on the website.
It is.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Vivian?
Yes, I'd be interested to know what museum that Archimedes screw is going to be in. It'll need a whole room for itself.
Sure, if anyone wants to take that one. Okay. All right. I think I was just going to tee up of, to thank the presenters today for providing the information that we got. In terms of next steps, again, the website's going to stay up for at least for a little while here, and we'll get it updated with materials from this meeting, and then it is archived, the meetings we've all had, the presentations, and the meeting summaries are all there. So you can certainly access it there. If there's something that you're remembering that you're not seeing, you're welcome to follow up with me or Jim, and what we do our best to try to track it down. Other than that's what we were hoping to do today. And I don't know if others have anything else to add. Otherwise, we can give you the hour back and let folks get back to their afternoons here. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and thank you again for your time on this water forum. And yeah, we'll be available at the website, and otherwise hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.